Hello and welcome to this repair tutorial, and today we're going to look at a NAD and the model number is C350. In terms of general specifications, power output is 60 watts per channel into 2 times 8 ohm speakers. Frequency response is 20 Hz to 20 kHz. Total harmonic distortion is 0.03%. Inputs 325 millivolts. All of these are line, supporting disc, video, tuner, aux, tape 1 and tape 2. You can also bypass the tone control circuits via the tone defeat switch on the front, individual bass, treble and balance controls. The amplifier supports a preamplifier output 1 and 2. For private listening headphone socket, you also have the 12 volt trigger input, which of course is very common on all NAD amplifiers. And on the rear you can select the soft clipping mode. In terms of dimensions, height, width and depth is 100 by 435 by 290 millimeters. And the amplifier weighs 7 kilograms. It also has a full-featured remote control, meaning that you can operate the motorized volume control. You can also place the amplifier into standby mode and to select any of the individual inputs. Now, on the rear of the amplifier, as you can see here, there are 2 links, and these are the links which are closest to the speaker terminals. And the reason why I'm mentioning those, these links can go missing. So maybe the amplifier has been in storage for a period of time. Depending on the setup, the links have then been mislaid. What you'll find is if the links are not installed, then it will not be connecting the preamplifier output to the main power amplifier. And what you'll hear is very, very low audio. So just to ensure that if the amplifier is being used as a full integrated amplifier, then these links must be installed. You have the option, of course, if you wish, to use the preamplifier output from the amplifier and then to connect a separate power amplifier, and at that point you may choose to use one of the preamplifier outputs, or you use dual preamplifier outputs by removing these links and then connecting them to separate power amplifiers. So what was the background to this amplifier before it came into the workshop? Well, the owner, Michael Brannigan, got in contact with me to advise that the amplifier had developed a fault, and from what I can understand was that there was no audio output. I think he sort of indicated that he'd sort of seen a wisp of smoke which had come from the amplifier, and also as well that the remote control didn't appear to operate any longer. Now, there had been some correspondence prior between me and Michael, and the reason for that is that he'd owned the amplifier, I think originally purchased back in 2000, and the amplifier had run very, very well until about 2012. And then it had developed a fault associated with the transformer, which is used for the standby mode. And we'll get into that in a little while. And what I've done is I've provided to him a toroidal, which he'd replaced, and some of the additional components, and the amplifier worked until more recently when it then developed this fault. Now, during test phase, what I'm indicating here is one of the input selection relays. So this amplifier doesn't, for example, have an integrated circuit to select each one of the inputs. It has individual relays, which is a very nice feature. And for the auxiliary input, what you could hear was that the relay was operating, but there was no audio coming from the switching connection. So that meant that when the common terminals were connecting, they weren't actually connecting them with what we would term as the normally open contacts, which close when a relay is energized. So as part of the repair and service for this amplifier, that relay was replaced. And you'll see that in the components, which will show you, i.e. all of the parts which were removed as part of the service and repair. Now, the nice thing with these amplifiers is that you always have this service hatch. So this really gives you full access to the entirety of the main circuit board, which is great. Like all of the amplifier repair tutorials which I cover, there's a number of things which you need to take care of. And again, I fully appreciate that an amplifier may have a particular fault, and you will take time then to localize where that fault is and change a particular component. But it's always very, very important to try and put some longevity back into the amplifier. One of the most common causes of failure, particularly amplifiers which have seen good usage and have been in operation for decades, is the deterioration of solder connections. And those can be associated where you have mechanical stress, maybe some of the inputs, or it could be related, for example, to the manufacturing process. There was maybe a sparsity of solder that was applied. But you can also get solder breakdown where you have components which are subjected to heat. and this is commonly in power supply or power sections. So what I'm telling you to do here is to really look at all of the solder connections, and any which look to be grey or maybe cracked, you need to reflow them or to resolder them. Now, with this amplifier, there was really two service bulletins which were issued, and this is one of them where we've took a copy of the service manual associated here with the standby circuit, and really the most common failure is this standby transformer, and it's a real pity, it really is, because what happens is that you have these high frequency filter capacitors which I've circled, and the service bulletin only refers to C511, 512 and 513, and they are 100 nanofarad, 100 volts. But there are actually 5 of these high frequency capacitors. So what I would tell you to do here, and you'll see this in one of the photographs, is to replace all 5 of those high frequency capacitors. And what happens is that the capacitors over a period of time will fail. They go short circuit, and that results in excess current then being drawn from the standby transformer, and then the internal thermal fuse goes open circuit and the amplifier will no longer operate, and there is no direct replacement. What I do hold in stock is a small toroidal transformer, which you'll see in a moment, which can be used to replace the standby transformer, and then of course replace the high frequency filter capacitors, and virtually in all cases you can restore the amplifier back to operation. So you can see here that the original transformer has been replaced with the toroidal transformer, and this was done by Michael. And what Michael asked was, as part of the repair, could I undertake a full recap of the amplifier, replace all of these JH electrolytic capacitors. These larger smoothing capacitors here, brand named NAD, and of course made by a capacitor manufacturer. And for all of the electrolytics, when you put them onto the ESR tester, they weren't bad. I've seen JH capacitors in way worse condition. So I think from an operational life point of view, this amplifier hasn't had extensive operation, understandably, because failure of the standby transformer. But to replace them, straightforward task, but I would say that typically for this work, it's probably going to take you about nearly 4 hours just to replace all the capacitors and to carry out all of the work which needs to be done then to restore the amplifier back to full operation. Now, to get access to this part of the amplifier, it's relatively easy. What you have is a number of multi-pin connectors, of course, which you need to disconnect, and then you have a couple of fixing screws, and then what you can do is you can bring out the complete module, which is the power supply section. On there you will see multiple protection fuses, and then you'll also see a vertical board which is mounted, and on that vertical board is the standby relay. And then here what I've done is I've circled where you can see these 100 nanofarad 100 volt rated capacitors, high frequency ones, and one of them which I've circled in red, this is the one which has gone short circuit. Now the reason why the remote control feature was not working, it was pulling down the standby voltage from the toroidal, and the toroidal wasn't running excessively hot, but it was running warm. Another thing that you can see on here is if you look towards the taller blue electrolytic capacitors, you can see this notorious brown glue, and this glue, as we know, is both conductive and also corrosive, so you need to take the time to remove all of that glue. So here I'm desoldering the components, and then I'm removing all of that brown conductive glue just to make sure that there's no issue in the future. And then as you can see on the right, nearest to the larger vertical capacitor, there is some of this brown conductive glue, and it was making a connection between the collector and emitter of the transistor. So again, that glue needed to be removed. So once all of those capacitors have been replaced, you can see here that I've fitted, these are 500 volt rating. It doesn't matter the fact that they are higher voltage rating than the previous capacitors, but as I said, I've replaced all 5 of those capacitors. The other smaller ceramic disc capacitors are 10 nanofarad, and of course not subjected to the same operational voltage that you're seeing here on the power supply section. You can also see as well that these are the Nichicon replacement electrolytics, and that there is no sign of any of this brown glue or contamination. And then here, when we look from the top of the amplifier, you can see the large toroidal transformer, and then what you can see then is the replacement power supply electrolytics. And then here, if we just take a more detailed view, looking down, you can see the multiple cables coming in, tied off with a cable tie, and you can just make out the top of the fuses. Now, part of any amplifier repair, service or restoration is also to remove any of the localized dust. Some amplifiers you get some degree, other amplifiers, depending on environment, you will get a lot. So here, all of that dust has been removed, and as I said, we carried out all of the remedial work to make sure that that brown conductive glue was completely removed. And then here, what I'm looking at, and I'll put an arrow indicating, is the speaker protection relay. Now, this is a sealed relay, and we know from all of the tutorials that over a period of time, this relay will switch thousands of times during the life of the amplifier, and current will pass through, and over that time period, what you'll find is that the contacts can become oxidized inside and also mechanically worn. And what that does is, with the oxidization, they become resistive. And what you can get is a very common issue which is reported with amplifiers, which at low volume you may have some distortion or maybe intermittent loss of audio. And then as you increase the volume control, the current will increase, and then it will overcome that resistance, or you will then start to hear breakthrough of audio. Now, there's no way that I can open this relay up and look at the contacts and clean them. So what I do is I just replace the relay then with a high specification relay. But it's typically 24 volt DC coil, and it's a double pole changeover relay. Now, I mentioned at the beginning of the tutorial that on the rear of the amplifier is a selection switch, and this is a soft clipping switch. And this is what you're seeing here. And the issue with these switches is, again, oxidization, which always will happen over time. So what you need to do is to desolder that selection switch. And then here what I've done is I've taken it apart. And what you can see is that there is oxidization on the contacts. And what you need to do is just to use a fiberglass pencil. Just rub it across the terminals. They will come up very, very bright. And then what I then apply is Deoxit D5, which then just provides that longevity and to help prevent any further oxidization. What you don't want on these types of switches, or any type of switch, is some degree of resistance. That resistance between the switching contacts must be as minimal as possible. And then also as well, there was a service bulletin which was issued, which was relating to a resistor which was underrated. And this resistor is R227. And the value of it is 560 ohms. And what you can find is, if this resistor has never been replaced and you look at it, then the resistor will be discolored. And then what I also found was that the resistance of the resistor had also increased as well. So it needs to be replaced and then uprated to a 2 watt fusible resistor. So here on the circuit board, you can see that I've drawn a red circle around it, and you can already see the discoloration. So this resistor is overheating over time, and as I said, you do need to remove it and then follow guidance as per the service bulletin. You can also make out as well that some of these older JH capacitors, particularly towards the larger power resistor, you can see that some of these capacitors, the tops are starting to bulge already. The inline integrated circuit that you see in there is the dedicated speaker protection IC. And then here, once all of that recapping has been done, all solder joints have been done, the next thing that we need to be looking at is how you're going to do the alignment. Now, remember also as well that you need to clean the user controls as well. So this is where you have the bass, treble and balance controls and volume controls. Clean those potentiometers with Deoxit D5. Also clean the headphone socket, and then you also have the tone defeat switch. Spray Deoxit into there and just operate them many, many times, just to ensure repeatable, noise-free operation. Now, this is an extract from the service manual, as you can see. What we're looking to do here is to make 2 adjustments for each of the channels. So the first thing that I need to do is power up the amplifier, leave it to warm through for about 20 minutes, and then once the amplifier is stabilised, what I'm looking to do first of all is to measure across the rear speaker terminals for the respective channel what the DC offset is. And what I'm looking to do here is to get it as close to 0 millivolts or 0 volts as I possibly can. But as with all things, there is a tolerance of plus or minus 30 millivolts. And then once the DC offset has been reset back to factory value, Then the next thing that I need to look at is to adjust the bias or the idling current for the amplifier, again for the respective channel. And what you have on the circuit board are upright pins, and here for the left channel it's TP101 and TP102, and we're adjusting the preset potentiometer VR104 until you have a reading of about 5 to 6.5 millivolts. Now sometimes what you can find is that the preset becomes dirty over time, so again if it's a little bit twitchy when you're making this adjustment, just spray some deoxide D5 with the amplifier powered off, rotate it backwards and forwards multiple times, return it roughly to its original position, and then power the amplifier back on again, and you should find that it's very, very easy then to make the adjustment. So here what you can see is I've highlighted the presets. So the ones which are circled with red, these are your DC offset presets, and then the presets with the yellow circle is used for the idle current and then bias. So here what I've done is I've connected my multimeter to the rear terminals, and this is after the recap has been completed, so I've made no adjustment whatsoever, and already you can see that it's very, very low. And then what I do is I then connect then to the other channel. Again, it's still very, very low at 0.55. So I just made some small adjustment, but as I said, when you're down at that level of millivoltage, it's negligible. There's no reason really to make any further adjustment. And so here, what you can see is that we've connected the multimeter up to make the adjustment for the bias. And what I would say is always use hook clips. Don't try and use your multimeter probes and try and balance them. Very, very easy. Maybe you short out the pins because you slip with the meter probes. So here I depower. I then connect up the hook clips and then power the amplifier back up. Just wait for it to restabilize again and then make the adjustment. Here what you can see is that this channel is high. It's 13.73 millivolts. I need to make the adjustment as we say, and then here what I've done is I brought it down to 6 millivolts, which is within the range as specified then in the service manual. But then when I did it for the other channel, then to make the initial measurement, it didn't require any adjustment at all. It was 6.34 millivolts. And as I said, in terms of adjustment for this amplifier, it's very, very easy to do. You've got excellent stability. And normally, in terms of setup, if you're going to be making these adjustments, you just need to ensure that you have no inputs connected, no speakers, that your volume control is at minimum, and then your user controls are at midpoint. So really that's all of the work which has now been completed. And then here if we just sort of take a look at the amplifier looking across, you can see on the left hand side you can just make out the motorized volume control and then the individual potentiometers and also the tone defeat switch. You can see the vertical black heat sinks. So here, this is where you have the regulated voltage supplies. You can also see the relays on the right. You can see the individual driver stages and then the main Sanken audio output transistors bolted to the heatsink. Then to the right, speaker terminals, and you can see the speaker protection relay has been replaced. And then just making out the standby transformer. And as I said, there's the vertical board for the power supply. So here what you can see is all the individual components have been removed. So you can see the branded NAD large electrolytic capacitors, the smaller electrolytics, those being the JH ones. You can probably make out a couple of the high frequency filter capacitors from the power supply, and then the black speaker protection relay, the auxiliary input switching relay. And what I've done is in the description I've also detailed the voltage rating and also the capacitance value for each one of them and the reference number as well. And then the final part, as with all of these amplifier restorations, was to leave the amplifier running for about 3 to 4 hours. Absolute joy to restore this amplifier back to Michael Brannigan, and I know that it does have sentimental value for him. It was his first amplifier that he had actually purchased. To bring these amplifiers back into operation and really to sit back and listen to the distinctive sound that you get is pretty special. So that's why I'll just love to restore amplifiers and give the owners of these amplifiers that listening pleasure back. So that sort of brings us to the end of this repair tutorial, and as always I really appreciate you stopping by, and if you need any help, guidance or assistance, by all means email audioamplifierservicing@aol.com and I'll be more than happy to help you and provide any guidance that you may require. So Until the next time, I wish you all the very best. Cheers and bye-bye.